Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, John Obolowski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. It's good to be with you this morning.
Good. Right back at you. I really enjoyed this series where we've been talking about really kind of building up to this, the formation of culture and so forth. And I really like the last several weeks. I think it's very important because we are evolving again from pandemic to endemic, coming out of some very difficult seasons where everybody had nothing to do but be upset about something. I feel like churches are coming together again, that there's an opportunity, that God is sending us a wave. And every surfer knows if you don't catch the wave, you miss the wave. Mm-hmm. And if you paddle just right and get on the wave does most of the work. Mm-hmm. You just stay in balance on the wave. And I really feel like our times together have been helping people catch that wave and let it do most of the work. So introduce to us our topic today for Pod 130.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap up this series of pods, Jim, with the subject of the value of meaningful values. I think I've worked for organizations in the past where values were created, but they didn't mean anything. And and in fact, instead of inspiring people, they inspired people to be cynical. Because the values were pasted on the wall, but there was no they didn't mean anything in terms of behavior or accountability, and so that's why I wanted to title it Meaningful Values. So we've talked about vision, which has to do with destination. We've talked about a playbook, which is the plays that we're going to run to move us toward that destination. We talked last week about right people with the right stuff, because we know how important, it is to have people in the right slots, doing what God has created them to do. And so I think what we're going to talk about today will put a bow on those three things that we've talked about so far. I believe this, that a church or a business won't get to the goal line without fuel.
Yeah.
And the culture that is created by meaningful values provides that fuel.
Yes.
So I want you to think about, I want those who are listening and watching to think about culture like gasoline. It's like fuel. Now, if you pour gasoline on a fire, bad things happen, right? But if you put gasoline and it's used properly, it actually helps you get somewhere. And so I'd like to explore that with you today. I think values or core values is another way of stating what we're really talking about here are behaviors. In their simplest form, right? Vision, like I said, answers the question where, a playbook answers the question what, and the right people with the right stuff answers the question who. Right. Values answer the question how.
Right.
How do we behave around here? And so these values are what I've termed, I think I coined this actually, organizational rumble strips. Yeah. And when I hit a rumble strip on the freeway, I automatically course correct. I know I've bumped into something, it shakes me up, and I move to the center. I get back in my lane. And I think that's how I think about values. So you might be listening or watching today and wondering, well, how do I get started with this? How do I get my arms around this whole idea of values? So that's what I'd like us to accomplish today, Jim, is talk.
And I think this next part is really important to our listeners and our watchers, because you cannot just adopt somebody else's values.
That's right.
They're successful. Let's take Coca-Cola's values. They're selling Coke. You know what I mean? This church was successful. Let's take their values. Like God has a vision for your community, your business, your family, and these values have to come from Him. Would you agree with that? This is not just a copy and paste off of something successful.
No, I 100% agree with you that I can't take some other organization's values and overlay them on what we're doing. If you try to do that, you'll fail.
Yes.
You not only fail, you'll create a sense of like in the business world where I saw this, you'll create a sense of cynicism with people.
Right.
When you try to talk about it again, they'll think, oh yeah, here we go again with the values discussion. So I'd like us to start with talking about how to identify what our core values are. And I think there's just questions you need to ask yourself organizationally, right? We had Jenny Catron on our podcast, I don't know, it was quite a while ago, talking about this very subject. And she said it this way: here's some questions to ask. And I love how Jenny put this. So I'm just going to relay what she said. She said, ask yourself this question: what do we look like when we're at our best organizationally? Is this trait inherent and natural for us? Here's another one. Has it been apparent in the organization for a long time? And then she added this to it, and I thought this was really interesting. She says, what do we wish we looked like at our best? Because Jenny believes this, and I agree with her, that there is a degree of aspiration to the values, but it shouldn't be so aspirational that it's laughable, it's ridiculous, right? So that's a series of questions. Here's one I'd like to add to that. So think about this. If I could clone anybody in our business, if I could clone anybody on my team or anybody in our church, who would that be? And why? Right? What stands out about them that would make me want 10 more just like them? And this gives you clues into your values. Give me some feedback on that, Jim.
I mean, I'm just nodding my head. I agree completely. I remember the time we talked to Jenny about this, and I like that you added that extra one, because we actually had this experience. We had failure after failure in our men's ministry through the years, through decades. And so I got a group of 30 guys over to my house for breakfast, and I respected them. And I said, tell me how you became you. And that dry erase board, fill it in. What was it? When did it happen? Who was involved? That became really the iteration of the men's ministry that we have today. Is we just listened to those that we wanted more of, and created a culture around their processes that got them there, realizing that their culture was ours. We just didn't have language for it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is we were allowing things that were not a part of our culture because we wanted to have a good men's ministry. But if anything in your church, in your life, in your family runs contradictory to God's will, God's culture, it eventually falls and fails, or he has to be confronted, and it's very painful. It's very time consuming, very energy draining. So I think that's brilliant. I think to define upfront who we are, why we're here, what we're doing, how we're going to do it, who we're going to do it with, these last series of podcasts, and now let's go do it. It makes perfect sense. Unless you're in the day-to-day battles where you don't have time to think about it. So take time to think about it.
And I'm glad you just said that. So, you might be thinking, okay, this sounds great. I've got these questions to ask. What's the best setting for that? I think if you're a lead pastor, let's use that as an example, you need to ask these questions yourself first.
Yes.
And try to get some answers.
If you open up to a committee, then whoever speaks the loudest now sets the values, and it can't be. People want to follow a singular set of values that comes from a leader they respect.
Right. And then once you've got good answers to that, and you've seen me do this with Converge Coaching, Jim, right? You bring that to the team, bring that to your key leaders and say, hey, I've been asking and answering these questions. Here's where I've landed. Here's what I believe are the core behaviors that are hills we're going to die on as an organization. Give me feedback. I want to hear from you. Now, what we're going to talk about next is part of that conversation with your team, right?
Right.
But I think, Jim, there is this individual aspect where the leader's got to get by himself or by herself and really think this stuff through and pray this stuff through before they sit down with their team and have the other conversation. I think it would be horrible to go into a meeting with your team and say, I have no clue what our core values are. Let's figure that out together. I think you're in for a mess. So, so this is the first thing, identify. The next piece of this is how do I amplify, how do I take what we've identified and then give language to it, right? How do I really get clarity on what I'm talking about here? So I think there's like 3 major questions that we need to ask about each value. What does it mean? Why does it matter? And what are the behaviors behind that value?
Yes.
So what does each value mean for real. And so, and we lead church teams in this discussion all the time. One of my favorite things to do is to have this discussion with a group of leaders at a church or in a business. So, we have a value here at Converge Coaching. One of our core values is compassion driven.
Yeah.
Well, how many of you know that compassion means something different to many people? There might be 15 interpretations of what that means. I have to specify, and we have to specify as a team, what do we mean when we say compassion?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And then ask the next question, why does that even matter? Who cares?
Yeah.
If we get this behavior right, what is there to gain? And if we don't get it right, what is there to lose?
Yeah.
And this is the second. So we're unpacking that second question. Why does this value even matter? And then the third piece, which I think is really important, is what behaviors are behind that value? Let's use compassion driven as an example.
Yeah.
For one behavior behind that value for us as an organization is that we are able to step into our clients' pain. So when I'm listening and when you're listening and our other teammates are listening to a pastor or a leader tell us what's going on in their world, we're not detached. We're not clinical in our thinking. There's nothing wrong with clinical thinking. I'm not against that, but we have the ability. I think God has just given us this grace to be able to actually step into that with that leader for a while and feel with them the pain they're feeling. Jim, I think that's one of our superpowers as an organization. It's core. So we have to ask the question, what behaviors are behind this value? So when we answer those three questions, Jim, and I know I'm going on here for a while, I really want to hear your feedback, but I think when we do that, it creates clarity.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of urgency around that behavior, and then it gives us common language.
Yes. Yeah.
So when anybody asks us in our business or at our church, what does that value mean? The leader, people know what it means, and they can give voice to that, and it's consistent throughout the organization. So I'll stop, and I'd like to hear. I kind of got on my horse there a little bit, but I'm passionate about this.
We've had this conversation, and I'm still learning from what you're saying, because I'm applying it to different aspects of my life now, of the churches I get to serve now. So I think what I'm hearing you say, those values create the rumble strips of culture. But culture is what we do, not just what we believe or what we say or what we repeat. And when you get to the place, for me, the whole goal is to get this to be who we are. We don't worship because that's what we do. We worship because that's who we are. We don't serve the poor because that's what we do. It's kind of our thing. It's not. It's the thing that is who we are. It's expressing who we are. Yep. And I think clearly defining culture so people. I think values give permission for good behavior, godly behavior, powerful effect. They don't have to wait for a class. They don't have to wait for a card.
That's right.
This is who we are, and this is what we do. And I think it does just the opposite too. It keeps us from bad behavior. We've had this conversation before, but in moments of great conflict with leaders that were storming out of the room, I stopped them and said, "Stop. We don't do that here. That is not the way we behave here." And they didn't know that until I corrected that, and then they realized, okay, we don't hang up the phone. We don't storm off. We don't, and then come back like nothing happened. We don't do that here. That's not our culture. Because our values are to work things out face to face with calm hearts, to forgive each other, whatever grievances. That is our culture. And that is the way we behave here. Right. We don't behave that way because of our values. We do behave this way because of our values. Right. This has created this culture where no one storms out or hangs up the phone. It's not allowed. And I love that, because I have to say that a few times, but I never have to say it again. Yep. The next time there's a conflict, we both sit in the room and talk, because we know that we don't behave that way here. And
not only do you not have to say that again, that individual who is now gathering that and understanding this is how we operate here, he now becomes an evangelist for that. She becomes an evangelist for that. One of the beautiful things, one of the most beautiful things for me, Jim, is not when I'm talking to my team about values. It's when I see my team living those values out or talking to each other about it without me being involved. That's when I get excited, right?
When you hear your kids say please and thank you, it was worth correcting their parents 1,000 times, right? We're polite or whatever that is. We open the door for the lady. When you see your grandson opening the door for his mother, you go, that was worth it. That's not what he's doing. That's the culture of our family, is we treat ladies like ladies. And when a 4-year-old opens the door for his mommy, instead of, hey, pick me up and carry me, it's like, can I carry that for you, Mom? I love that. Like you're saying, seeing your team live those values effectively. It's like being a grandparent.
It really is. It's just exciting. So this values discussion, values are really like the building blocks of culture, right? So identifying what they are, asking these 3 big questions. What does it mean? Why does it matter? What are the behaviors behind the value? And then here's the third piece. This is the really important as well. If you don't get this piece, the first 2 aren't going to help you as much. And that is, how do we use those values to shape culture? Because remember, culture is fuel. If you have a healthy culture, you have a lot better chance of getting to the end zone.
It's crazy.
If you have a toxic culture, you have almost no chance. I think you have 0 chance of getting to the end zone. So how do we do that? We're not going to go deep dive into this, Jim, but here's just 4 things that will help you leverage values to shape culture. First one is teaching, right? I think many times we forget this, that we get what we teach. We get what we teach. So, every year we talk about values as a team. When we meet, we talk about the values throughout the year. If I observe one of our teammates living out a core value, I make sure they know about it, and I try to make sure the rest of the team knows about it as well.
And everybody knows we've had that conversation. We said, listen, Jim, we believe in win-win. We just had this conversation the other day.
Yes, we did.
If you win and they don't, or they win and you don't, that's not what we do here. So, and that's helpful for me because I know, but just this one time, no, we believe in win-win relationships, and it's been good.
Yeah, I remember that conversation. It just happened when it happened. A couple of days ago, we had this conversation. And I believe that. I believe so. We teach the values, right? We reinforce it. We model the value, right? One of the values we have is healthy work rest rhythms. And I know that's a value that allows us, if we operate like that, it allows us to speak with authority into the lives of leaders who are workaholics. And, if we're workaholics, we have 0 credibility, 0 influence. When we tell somebody to slow down and we're not resting, it's like, it doesn't matter. There's no.
Can you imagine the Zoom call? Like, hey man, sorry I'm late. I didn't sleep good last night. I've been working 60 hours a week. What are we talking about today? Work, rest, rhythm. Okay, this is what you should do. Like, no one's listening anymore. If you're not living it, if I can't see it on your face, I don't want to hear it out of your mouth. It's not true to you. So even though it might be true, I need to see it.
And really, Jim, the only transitions that we've experienced in the last 9 years as an organization have been around values. Values mismatch. Modeling, right? That's powerful. Teaching's important. I think modeling is maybe more important than even teaching. And then thirdly is celebrating. And we already talked about that. When somebody, hits the nail on the head with a value, I do my best to make a big deal of that, because what gets celebrated is repeated. And that's true with raising kids. That's true with raising an organization or leading an organization. What gets celebrated gets repeated. And then the last piece of using these values to shape culture is accountability. And I already mentioned that, right? The accountability factor. If Jim, if you're on vacation, can I use you as an example?
Sure.
If you're on vacation and you're emailing me about work, you're going to get not a nice email back from me. It's going to go something like this. Why are you emailing me while you're on vacation? Yes. Are you dying? Are you, if you're dying,
we can talk about this next week. Yeah.
That's fine, but please don't do that again.
Yeah. And and I also said to model that when you went on vacation recently, you said, listen, I'm going on vacation. I will be checking things, but I don't want to hear from you because I'm on vacation. If you need me, I'm always here for you. If you don't need me, then I'll be back in a week or 2 weeks, whatever it was, 10 days. And then we can discuss that. And I thought that was, again, you're not warning us not to call you. You're saying this is one of our values. I'm modeling it in front of you. I expect it from you, and you can expect it from me. That when we're off, we're off. And it's healthy people doing healthy things creates a healthy culture.
Yeah, I remember the exact words I used with all of you.
Yeah.
I said, unless you're bleeding or something is on fire, don't call me.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we take that seriously, right? That
yes,
it means a lot to us. So, Jim, I feel like the values piece sometimes is hard, for organizations who haven't been thinking this way at all, or maybe they did in a while back and they didn't have success. They didn't feel like that went well, and so they said, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Look, we want to just encourage you and challenge you at the same time today. One, you can do this.
Yes. Let
me just encourage you. You can learn how to do this. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be this. I don't know what terms they use anymore for leaders, Jim, that are like these, just got all the skills in the world. Look, you can just be an average leader and you can do this.
Yes.
So I want to encourage you, but I also want to challenge you. You better do this.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I believe you will fall short of your potential as an organization. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like the church down the road. You don't have to be as large as that church. You don't have to be none of that. I'm just saying to be the best possible version of you as an organization, the values exercise, the values living out, all of that, I think is non-negotiable. It must happen.
Yes. Well, I think you said before, every organization does have values and culture. It just may not be the right one.
Yeah.
So and I say this too, that the right God-given, wise, decisive, written, known values, they do a lot of heavy lifting.
That's right.
Like a lot of it, you don't have to run around putting out forest fires. You can spend a lot more time planting trees because they are speaking and they are working when you are not. They are not just on the wall, but inscribed on the hearts of your team. They will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and people will work better. The teams will be more unified. And if they're not, it's because of a value. Like you said, the only separations from Converge have been not, it hasn't been gross immoral sin. It hasn't been burnout. It's been a value thing. I don't believe that's not the way I want to live my life. That's not something I want to give my life to. Well, then that's great. But we are giving our lives to this, and that's fine if you don't want to. It gives people an honest choice and decisions to make, and it's a kind thing to do for people in your organization, for sure. Yeah, an imperative one. Thanks, John. This has been great. There are rarely seasons or series rather that I go, that was it. It's all important. It's all meaningful. You know what I mean? But this one, I really feel like I said at the beginning, this has been a wave. God has been positioning these talks as culture has evolved. They were planned before the news came out, before the changes came. I really feel like there's a lot of wisdom in everything you say, but this has been not just wisdom. This has been, it takes wisdom to build a boat. It takes wind for the boat to sail. This has had wind in it. There's been wind in this one. So thank you so much for your obedience and your leadership. We all benefit from it. And I would say again, like I try to regularly, I would like to have more conversations. You'd like to have more conversations. If they would want to have another conversation with you about this or other things, I say, I don't know. There was a culture when I got here, and how do I change that? We haven't addressed that. Is there a retreat that I go to? Is there a process other than these simple steps? What's that look like? That'd be another conversation. And how could we have that conversation with you?
Yeah, the best way is to go to our website, convergecoach.com. And there's a contact us link that brings up a form. Fill that out, get that over to us. And myself or one of my teammates will get back to you, and we'll give you 30 minutes of our time. And if we can help you further, then great. If we can't help you, we'll find somebody. We probably know somebody who can help you, and we'll get you into their. We'll get you connected to them. Jim. One other thing, real quick, I want to make sure we talk about is our next upcoming pod.
Yeah.
Man, we have a special guest. He's been with us before, and every time he's been with us, Jim, he has just hit a home run. It has just been so good and so memorable. So we have Josh Spurlock coming back to be with us. Josh is the founder of My Counselor Online, which is a clinically informed, faith-based counseling ministry. I love it. And they really focus on leaders. On working with pastors and missionaries and their families. They're dealing with people who are on the front lines, in the battle, in the fray. And Josh is insightful. He's funny. And he's convicting. He's all of that.
Yes, I was going to say, he writes truth on a 2x4, hits you in the face with it. You feel better about it after he does it. And like you say, you laugh. I remember, we'll share the story next week, but I remember him just nailing me one time. And he did it with a question. It was straight deadpan face. And I realized what he was saying to me. I just busted up laughing.
Yes.
Because that's like, the question I just asked you, now that you've said that, is so dumb. I'm embarrassed that I asked it. But it was a moment of revelation. I'm trying to make everybody happy. He's like, Jesus didn't ever do that, did he, Jim? I'm like, oh, okay. So
I'll never forget
you'll enjoy it. Yeah, it'll be enjoyable. Right on. Well, thank you, John. Speaking of enjoyable, this has been a great series, and thank you for your heart, your prayer, your faith, and we are looking forward to next week. So our dear listeners and watchers, God bless you. And we are cheering for you. We believe in you. We want to see you succeed. And if you say, I've heard John say many times, reach out to me for that half hour, do it this time. Don't just listen someday. Someday you're going to start your diet. That's why you have 3 chins. Don't do that. Just do it this time. Get on the phone, get on the website, Converge Coach, and let's start this conversation. God bless you. Live long and prosper as you continue to lead from alignment.